up front, but every place I go, they wanna looking for in North York area
Yeah.
where their job was. So that's a high, Young Street, Willowdale area.
Yeah.
And it's a very high demanding area. Every place I go and talk to them now, say no, we're not gonna do it unless you put something up front, like 6
Yeah,
8
well,
weeks.
see-
And that's the realtor telling me.
Mhm.
I told him this is illegal. He said to me, one girl I talked to, this Chinese girl, and I talked to her and I said, you're asking me illegal to do it.
Mhm.
She said, if you think it's illegal, don't do it.
Yep, exactly.
So,
But it is a market reality, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
it
So I just want to add, like for the 6 months, I checked with the lawyer, if you put the word voluntarily, it's going to be fine.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about it. Same thing goes for when you ask for 12 or 10 post-dated checks.
Yeah.
Illegal.
It's
it's
illegal.
illegal.
It's
not
illegal,
required, yeah.
but it's not illegal if they're offered.
Yeah.
Yes.
If they agree, it's not illegal.
So do you have to write any specific word in the agreement?
The tenant agrees to provide,
Yeah.
or the tenant suggested to provide, or tenant represents to provide. So basically, it's coming from the tenant. The seller is not requesting it.
So what about first and the
But-
last month?
The first and last month is still required. Well, hold on. It's not required. You don't need to rent out with the last month's deposit. You do not need to rent out with the first month deposit. You can rent out from the day they come and they give you the money.
So technically speaking, even with these new rules being passed on in the agreement to lease, there's still loopholes in the system. It's just not
No,
working.
it's not loopholes. The system itself is pretty screwed up. So I'll be the first to admit that.
Yeah.
I was a landlord for a very long time. I've lost a lot of money in this stuff. So there's a lot of loopholes for tenants and there's a lot of loopholes for landlords as well. So what they're doing is they're tightening them down. How many of you know what a renoviction is? Renoviction.
When they're
Evict somebody when they-
renovating, they
Renovating.
evict the tenants
Yeah.
out.
They were.
So what they do is, this is, again, we're talking about tenants being bad, landlords are worse. So what they do is they wanna jack up the rent. So what do? They go to landlord and tenant board and say, I'm renovating the property, I need to get these tenants evicted. So they kick the tenants out, right? The tenants have first right of refusal on coming back, right? How many of you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the tenants have the first right of refusal to come back. Before they can come back, they go and they rent it to somebody else at a higher price.
Or they can say my mother or father, son is coming in.
Exactly. So they go and they rent it to somebody else, and now the new tenant that has come in is paying a higher amount and has the same rights that the other tenant has. You let them qualify. So everybody's taking advantage of it. So it needs to be looked at. So this is a good step. One of the things that it's going to do is going to standardize a lot of the agreements, and is going to let everybody know what their rights and what their rights are under the law. There's still going to be people that are going to take advantage of it. There's still going to be people that are going to start putting their own leases in there. But I want to make sure that you guys are not going to get caught with it. Yes.
Yeah, adding something to it, I came across in many cases where it's a new immigrant
Yes.
not paying, and that agent is voluntarily asking if you can get the place where they're ready to pay for 1 year. And I came across with so many leases where 1 month upfront rent, 1 year upfront leases have been rent paid right upfront.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is
Now
it.
let me ask you a question. If they are prepaying the rent, is that considered a deposit?
Yes.
Why?
No deposit.
It's prepaying the rent.
They're prepaying the rent. There's your loophole.
No, but the question over here is, irrespective whether it's voluntarily, like I've never asked,
Mhm.
representing as a listing agent for that lease, I never asked, but if they are agreeing onto something and they are providing, it's free will.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Nobody's forcing,
Yeah.
because maybe the next place they're gonna go, they would have faced a similar thing in there. So I think
I have a
if somebody's
situation.
agreeing to it, that's fine.
Absolutely. I have a situation right now where I have a listing in Scarborough. It's a 3-bedroom condo, $2,800. So I have somebody coming in. They're coming from out of the country, and they only need it for 6 months. So now the question becomes: do you lease it for the price, like $2,800? Do I lease it for that for 6 months? What would you do in that situation? Because the client is looking at it saying, hey, if I'm leasing for 6 months, I'm not paying you full commission on this. How would you tackle that?
Commission will be reduced.
Jack up the rent, like,
Right,
it's $3,000.
right. So how would you do that? So if you make it $3,000,
Maybe
right?
daily rate,
Hmm?
daily rate,
Explain.
you can charge, like, for example, you calculate it like what's the yearly basis, and 6 months I'm gonna charge you $90 a day,
Okay.
as long as our agreement could be 6 months, and you can pay me this much, per day.
Yeah.
That could be legal as well, I don't know.
Yeah, it could be legal. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do
Yeah.
weekly. You can't do daily under Residential Tenancies Act. You
Okay.
cannot do daily. You can do weekly, and you can do monthly, or you can do yearly.
Okay,
So you can do those things. Because daily, it does not, so as soon as you do daily, it's the INS Act. How many of you know what an INS Act is? The INS Act.
In-
Like a hotel
Yeah.
and
Hotel Act.
Yeah.
okay.
So they have the right to do it on daily basis. This is where the big conflict is with Airbnb and RTA. The reason our Airbnb gets dinged a lot is because of the INS Act. The INS Act says that only a commercial business can do the daily rental. So if there's a Airbnb that is for a week, it's no problem. But if it's for a day, it becomes a problem. Everybody with me so far? All right, so if you go to this page, you can read through this. So there's a standard lease, all the details. What I want to concentrate on is the standard lease template. So,
Maybe before we go there,
Yes.
it's funny you say here, it says who must use this form. It only says single residence and semi-detached. That covers pretty much every kind of residence.
absolutely.
All kind of available.
Yeah, single homes, apartment buildings. So, because look at it, single homes, a condo, what is it? Single home, right? A basement, it covers it. So it specifically mentions basement. It says apartment building, so any apartment building that you can go to will have this. So even if you have a triplex or a duplex, this covers
Okay.
it. All right. So if you were to click that link, it will take you to this page. Now, this is the Ontario government's page for all forms legal. So any legal form out there that you need to get, you can go to this. So you can just save this, forms.ssv.on.ca. Sorry, .gov.on.ca. And you can actually look up any form. You want to make a will, you can find a standard document for that over here. You need to file a claim, you need to do whatever. All documents are available over here, so you guys should have this handy. So, over here you have two kinds of links available. So there is the standard form of lease, and then there is the browser friendly. So I'm going to use the browser friendly one. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong one. This one. This is the fillable one.
Yeah, same thing.
It's the same form. One is fillable, the other one you can just print out. Sorry. I forgot to do this today.
You remind me to do it.
What is going on?
Reader, higher.
With the file.
Alright, we'll just open up the other one. Alright, so this is the standard form going forward. Again, all tenancies are being entered into after April 30th require this. Now, it also gives you, it does not apply to care home sites in mobile home parks and land lease communities, most housing, social housing, certain other special tenancies or cooperative housing. See Part A of general information. Guys, there's like 14 pages over here. So this is an intense document. Residential tenancies in Ontario are governed by the Residential Tenancies Act of 2006. This agreement cannot take away a right or responsibility under the Residential Tenancies Act. Very, very important to note. Under the Ontario Human Rights Code, everyone has the right to equal treatment in housing without discrimination or harassment. All sections of this agreement are mandatory and cannot be changed, so you cannot make any changes to this form. So, party to this agreement. Who are the two parties there?
Landlord and tenant.
Landlord and tenants. That's easy, right? Then you have number 2, rental unit. So, what is the rental unit?
Basement or anything. Yeah.
Whatever is being rented, right? So if you have a basement apartment, you would have the address and it will say either basement unit, because you could have multiple in basements too. And then you have street number, street address. Is the rental unit is The rental unit is a unit in a condominium, yes or no? If yes, the tenant agrees to comply with the condominium declaration bylaw and rules as provided by landlord. So now right here is a prompt for you to make sure that your bylaws are being provided to the tenant. Now, a lot of times with the new companies, a lot of property management, good property management companies, if you tell them that you have a tenant that is moving in, they will send you a copy of the bylaws. So you can share them with the company, with your tenant right away. So make sure you can follow up with them if your landlord doesn't have them. Contact information. How many of you have lease agreements that don't have contact information? None of your, like the OREA forms don't have contact information for the sellers. For the landlord.
They do have a space for the address.
Notices.
No, yeah, for the notices.
But
The
if-
only thing they have rental application, that has a contact information.
But it's only for
Yeah.
the tenant though.
Yeah.
You don't have the landlord's information.
There is some
That's
space
right,
there.
that's right. yeah.
That is
There is
the
some
other form
space.
of.
No, there's no space for the landlord. It has only property
Form
address,
one.
that's it.
But
Yeah.
contact information in an emergency situation or something, the landlord has to give some contact.
Yes, they have to, but there is nothing being specified anywhere. Like if you look at the agreement of lease, it doesn't have any place where you can put the landlord's information.
Two things, if the property is managed by a property management company, still they need to put it in there.
No, you can put the property management information.
And if the landlord doesn't want to give their personal information to the tenant, if they doesn't want.
Both
to
the
give-
landlord and tenant agree to receive notices by document by email, so that's what this is talking about.
Because it
You just
could
put the
be-
property, management's information there.
Yeah, and because there could be a possibility that the landlord is not even in the country.
Exactly, so you just have a property management information in there. That's a very good point.
Oh, in this form, agreement of lease, there is a landlord address,
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 not
but
contact information.
so contact doesn't count.
Oh, these guys don't have the phone number either, so scratch that thought, you're right. Alright, both the landlord and tenant agree to receive notices and documents by email where allowed by the landlord and tenant board rules and practice. If it says yes, then you have to fill out the email address over here. Is the landlord is providing phone and or email contact information for emergencies and day-to-day communication, so this is where you would put the property management information. Does that make sense? Alright. Terms of tenancy. So the tenancy starts, you put the date, the tenancy agreement is for, select for an option below, a fixed length of time ending on date. A monthly tenancy, other, daily, weekly, please specify. So it says daily over here, I don't know why. That might be a question that we can ask, because daily means it's for,
Inc.
yeah, for the in act. So I'm not sure why it has daily. So this is something, Oasis, can you make a note so we can check that out?
Sure.
Alright, the tenant does not have to move out at the end of the term. That's very important now, they're letting them know. Before, the rents were going up, the person would say, oh, my lease is ending, okay, I'm leaving. Now you can jack up the rent. Now they know that they don't have to leave at the end of the rent, at the end of the term. The rent is to be paid on the first, second, or third of the month or weekly, first Monday of each week, yes.
Regard for the question number 4, let's see, for example, tenants is lease expiring, and he decided, okay, I contact them, I said, okay, your lease expiring, when we would like to meet and putting a new lease for a year.
Yeah.
Oh, I decided to month to month.
Okay.
I
It
don't
goes
see,
into-
I don't see in this form.
It goes month to month anyway. That's per the
After-
Residential Tenancies Act.
So that's gonna go.
Yeah.
But it's still that 60 days apply for if they leave.
They have to give 60-day notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it talks about it afterwards.
Okay.
All right. The tenant will pay the following rent: base rent of the unit, parking if applicable, other services and utilities if applicable. Total lawful rent. So this is the lawful rent for the unit, subject to any rent increases allowed under Residential Tenancies Act. For example, the landlord and tenant agree to a seasonal rent increase for additional services for air conditioning or a block heater plug-in. The amount does not include any rent discounts. Everybody with me so far?
Yeah.
So in the summer, you're not gonna have air conditioning, right? So, but in the winter, but in the summer, air conditioning comes on, you have it set with them that if they need to have an air conditioning in their unit, they have to pay another $50 a month. Oh, I've seen it. I've seen it. But that's only when hydro is included. Alright? Same thing with block heater. So, anybody know what block heater is?
Yeah, they plug in.
For the cars, right? So that you plug in the block heater for your car. So in the winter, the car stays warm. So it starts easily in the morning. We don't use it over here, but in very, very cold environments, they have to plug the car in, otherwise it won't start. So something like that costs money, so you would actually have it as a separate service.
But this is only when hydro is included in the rent.
This is when hydro is included in the
So
rent.
this is another easy loophole as well. Let's say, for example, I'm renting out the apartment or basement. I charge for $1,500 plus the utility plus the parking.
Mhm.
So $50 parking. Let's say, for example.
It's available right now too.
But that's rather than I'm taking like as a key deposit, I'm taking as a rent for the car.
Well, it's available to you right now too. Don't forget, like the market will correct all the pricing and fluctuations that you have. If you're charging $50 for parking and nobody in the neighborhood is charging $50 for parking, your property is not getting rented.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. So market fluctuations will fix that. All right, so rent is payable to, so you specify who's the rent payable to. Rent will be paid using the following methods. So by check, by cash. The tenant cannot be required to pay rent by post-dated checks or automatic payments, but can choose to do so. I personally, when I was doing a lot of landlording, I would actually have auto withdrawals out of their account set up, so that I can make sure that the money is always coming in. I don't have to worry about it. Or I would actually at the end I started doing EMTs. How many of you done EMTs with your tenant with your tenants? No?
Electronic transfer?
Yeah, email money transfers. Those are also a good way, so you don't have to go to the bank to deposit them. Alright, if the first rental period is a partial period, the tenant will pay the partial rent of X amount. So let's say if you're renting it for $30 a month, and they're moving in on the 15th, there's $15, that's where you would specify it. The rent covers the rental from the date to the date. If the tenant check is returned for NSF, the tenant will have to pay the landlord's administrative charge of, cannot be more than $20.
Isn't it usually 50?
I know.
It's usually
I know. That's what I saw too, and I'm like, okay. So there's a ding in the landlord's pocket. So this is an administration fee, plus NSF charges. So you cannot, I usually charge $100 administration fee, because that means that I have to figure out, I have to follow up and get the check and all that, cannot be more than $20. But if it's $40 for NSF, you charge them that. Questions? Anybody happy with it so far?
No.
More rights for
The following services are included in the lawful rent for the rental unit. So very, very important. These are the services that are included. Do not say yes to something that is not included. So what is included in the lawful rent? I would say none of it. Nothing is included in the lawful rent. So anything else, you just specify over here. Any questions?
One question.
Yes.
Services included, does that mean if it's
If hydro is included, right, you would specify yes, hydro is included in here.
so this would normally be for condo,
This would be for everything.
but if it's like a single dwelling
Yeah.
freehold house?
We're gonna get into it a little bit later too. So it's gonna talk about how the services are, who pays for the services. So, but if let's say the gas is included, so if it's a triplex, or if it's a property that has 3 units in it, a lot of times what will happen is gas would probably get included in it. For a lot of the apartment buildings, small apartment buildings, you see gas is usually included, and the reason for it is because it usually has radiant heat. So there's one big massive boiler in the basement that is heating up the whole building. So gas is usually included. So in that case, you will say yes, gas is included. Air conditioning, if somebody is paying for services that we pointed out, as we pointed out before over here. Where do you go? Where do you go? Additional services. So, additional services over here. So if we have air conditioning for $50, right? And you have block heater for $50, that's added to the lawful rent. You're just basically going in and confirming all of those things. Also, how many of you rent out units that have lockers?
Yeah,
right?
Condominiums,
Yeah, so for condominium, you would have lockers. On-site laundry. So if there's a ensuite laundry for the unit, you would say, yes, it's included. Or if it's a pay per use in the basement, you just specify it's pay per use. This is just basically pointing everything out to them. Alright, the following utilities are the responsibilities of electricity, landlord, tenant, heat, landlord, tenant, water, landlord, tenant. So this is for a single family home. If you have something happening, like the utilities, you would specify the tenant is responsible for any utilities provide for arrangements, i.e. tenant sets up accounts and pays the utility provider. Or tenant pays for a portion of the utility cost. So that goes to putting the percentage. You would specify that over here. Any questions so far?
An extension of that, something to what you were saying earlier. What if there is a tenant whose lease is expired over the course of 1 year and it's on a monthly now, and they refuse to do a renewal of 1 year? Is that basis of termination? There's no actual basis of
No.
termination of the lease.
No.
So how do we actually enforce our 1 year lease again? Is there a way to do that?
No. This stays month to month.
It stays month to month
Yes.
till they agree upon, or
Well, you can keep on increasing the rent as you're going along, based on the RTA, the Residential Tenancies Act. So whatever their allowable is, you keep increasing that.
Or owner gets, but you need to lose 1 month rent.
we lose 1 month rent for relocation services.
Yep. But that's the new rule that came up.
Same extension of that question is, let's say if they have end of lease on June, right? And the last month is June. But they said, okay, I'm not gonna continue on. Because somebody called me last night, similar question. And they have month to month, he wanna go month to month because he wanna buy his home.
Mm-hmm.
So he said to me, the tenant said to him, I wanna use his last month as a rent month to month. So
No.
he asked me and said, no, you can't do that. So I wasn't sure, but
Yeah.
I said, no, you have to keep it continue and pay it.
If he
And he also, he can increase 1.8%, whatever the.
yeah, and you have to give 60-day notice for that too,
Yeah.
for the increase. But going back, if you have a tenant that says, I'm gonna use my last month, right? That's literally ending the tenancy. You can just end the tenancy at that point.
So that is basis of termination at this point.
Yes, but you have to get them to sign a piece of paper
Yes.
agreeing to that.
Could you
Say
repeat
it
that,
again,
please?
please, the last month, right?
Last month, if they say, I'm gonna start using my last month's rent, right? That's basically saying that, yes, I'm using my last month's rent, I'm ending my tenancy. But you have to get them to sign a piece of paper that they are ending their tenancy.
So which piece of paper, just like handwritten?
No.
Okay.
Their, landlord and tenant board has a document, it's, notice to end tenancy.
Okay,
So there's two different versions of it, one by landlord, one by tenant. You wanna get the one from the tenant and get them to sign that one.
okay.
You don't wanna do a notice to end from the landlord, the tenant is using theirs, get them to sign that
So
one.
what does that mean?
That their tenancy is done.
So from next month, he's
They
not
have to
even
find
month to
another
month.
place.
He's not even month to month.
No, the agreement
So
is done.
period,
Yeah.
this is your last day,
That's right.
okay.
Let's just say they refuse to even do that for 1 year tenancy.
You can't do
and
anything.
Notice of.
You- Sorry,
But
if
isn't
they
that basis
sign,
of termination?
if they sign that piece of paper,
No, they do not.
okay,
So, but the
they use the
contracts-
last month,
They use the last month.
okay, then you can go and file for non-payment.
Non-payment, and that is grounds for termination.
Exactly. Yeah, so you can file for non-payment at that point, and you can charge them from the day that they haven't made the payment.
Yeah.
So if they start from the start, this is one thing that is very important. When you have tenants, you have to be right on them on the first day for rent. If they're slacking behind, for every day you wait, it's a day in their favor. Because the landlord and tenant board is going to give them 10 days to come up with a resolution. So if you took 10 days to serve them, they have now till the 20th of the month to, can you turn your volume down? Yeah. Now they have till the 20th of the month to come up with the money. If you took 15 days, they have till the 25th. Your month is done. So it's very, very important that you stay right on it. So within the first 3 to 4 days, if somebody hasn't made their payment, send them a notice right away.
So this 10 days is the notice time for.
For them to
renewal,
respond.
And then have 15 extra days to okay.
Exactly.
Instead of 25.
Yeah. So it's just gonna eat up your time. So it's always good for within the first couple of days that you send the notice out. And you can have a conversation with your tenant. This is what I used to do. I said, listen, you know, I understand that you're running behind. You're telling me you're gonna make a payment in 5 days. I still have to serve you this notice. Because if you don't make the notice and if you don't make the payment in 5 days, I lose those 5 days. So nothing personal against you. This is me protecting myself. You're telling me you're gonna make the payment, and I believe you. But I still have to serve you this notice. Because if you don't do this, because if they say, hey, I'll make a payment in 5 days, right? And then those 5 days are gone, now you're sitting on the 10th, your whole month is gone right away.
Then
What do you get that
also is some.
ltb.gov.on.ca, that's a website. Landlord and tenant board.gov.on.ca. Sorry.
Is this a new notice also?
No.
Or is it the same?
This is part of Residential Tenancies Act.
So let's see if it doesn't do it, then you have to, another notice, like what, how do you?
If they don't do it, then you make a application to landlord and tenant board to have them evicted. And then they still have until the last day of eviction to make the payment. Because if they make the payment, then everything resets again.
Yes.
The other thing is, a loophole in there is that if they make a partial payment, it resets the time too. So you want to make sure that you do not accept partial payments. Because this has happened to people. They're like, hey, oh, I owe you $800. Here's $500. I'll get you the rest next week. You take the $500, everything resets.
Can you put in the lease agreement like a specific thing that where it says the tenant agrees that if he doesn't pay within,
No.
if he misses 2 weeks
No.
of payment?
No, no. Can't do that. Because this is why they have this lease. Because a lot of people were doing this stuff. All right? Everybody good? All right. Okay, if the tenant will be responsible for paying for electricity measured by a meter or suite meter, the landlord must give the prospective tenant available information about the electricity usage in the rental unit over the last 12 months using the appropriate landlord and tenant board form.
What does that mean?
So, you know how you have, do you guys remember, when was the last time you guys saw your hydro bill?
Yesterday.
Every day.
Yesterday? Every day? Alright, on the main page, on the right hand side, you see those graphs, right? It shows the usage. So what
Yeah.
they're saying is that you need to use the landlord and tenant board form and show that usage to the tenant.
To a new tenant?
Yes.
Or a tenant who is?
To a new tenant.
To a new tenant.
To a new tenant, but this is conditional on the tenant being responsible for paying for their own utilities.
Yeah.
So that's where it is. Alright? Next we have rent discounts. So there is no rent discount. The lawful rent will be discounted as following, whatever the reason might be. Alright? Rent deposit. A rent deposit is not required. Again, it is an option, as we were talking before. Or the tenant will pay the rent deposit of X amount. This can only be applied to rent of last month's period of tenancy. Alright? Little note in here. This amount cannot be more than 1 month's rent or the rent for one rental period, i.e. 1 week in a weekly tenancy. Whichever is less. This cannot be used as damage deposit. The landlord must pay the tenant interest. Ooh, getting close. The landlord must pay the tenant interest on the rent deposit every year. How many of you know that you have to pay your rent and interest?
Schedule B?
No. That's deposit
Oh,
interest.
that is the,
So you have a tenant that comes and rents a property from you. So Vinu is renting a property from me. He gives me $100 for the first month and $100 on the last month, right? I legally have to pay him interest on that money,
11 months. Which is.
2%.
but I don't have to give him. I don't have to give it to him.
Use it towards the.
I don't have to give it to him because that interest that I have to pay him offsets the rent increases he has. Everybody with me?
I know.
Because the rent increases are always in line with inflation, and inflation is in line with interest payments that you have to make. So the overnight lending rate that you see, that's what is measured, is usually inflation rate change, inflation change. So you don't have to pay the deposit out of your pocket, but you have to accrue for it. So when we're doing apartment building sales, one of the things that we ask for is when did the tenant move in, what was their rent deposit? and then the lawyers will go in, and then they will do this fancy calculation about all the interest that we have to pay. So, if you have a tenant that has been there for a very, very long time, don't be surprised to see a huge amount of money being taken out of your pocket and being put into this kitty bank. Alright? So, key deposit. A key deposit is not required, or the key deposit the tenant will pay a refundable key deposit to cover the cost of replacing the keys, remote entry devices, or cards if they are not returned to the landlord at the end of the tenancy. If a refundable deposit is required, provide description and number of keys, access cards, and remote entry. This is the best part. The key deposit cannot be more than the expected replacement cost. So this is what we were talking about before. We just did a lease in X2 condos in downtown Toronto. I had a $200 deposit in there, and then the tenant came back and he's like, "Oh, but it's cost to replace it $600." I'm like, "I don't care. It's $200 deposit." But under this one, it wouldn't be legal anymore.
It doesn't say anything about the hot water rental.
No. But you can specify it there. Right? It's got spaces in there, so lawful rent, you can include it in there. Alright, under provincial law, smoking is not allowed in any indoor common areas of the building. The tenant agrees that on these additional rules. So this is additional rules, guys. This is very important. Additional rules on smoking. Select one, none. Or smoking rules. So there are no smoking rules, or there are smoking rules. You are not allowed to smoke. So this is where you would have your cannabis in here too. Like if you want to do a disclosure telling them you cannot smoke indoors, cannabis, cigarettes, anything. This is where you would specify that.
So what about the new legislation, Liberal coming up with this weed thing, and that's most of the landlord nightmare. If they think because it's it's the same thing. It's a human rights issue right now because it's in law. For example, I have tenant came in, and he came in with no pets, nothing. 6 months later, I just went to that property. I saw a huge dog. I said, "Whose dog is it?" "Oh, my friend's dog," and this and that. So anyhow, I able to evict him. I told him, okay, I need insurance for his, and this, you can have it. And he said, "No, I'm not paying for this insurance and pet details." So he leaves. So that's what happened. But in case the person who has some issues, he didn't tell me, and he's smoking inside because he said, "Oh, I cannot."
You can file a claim against them. As long as you specify, it's not about human rights.
Medical issue, right?
Yeah, go outside and smoke the medical issue. Your medical issue does not limit you from going outside. If you can get up and smoke, you can go outside and do it.
Even though in that weed situation as well? I'm
So
not talking about the not regular smoking.
So-
I'm talking about very
okay,
specific, which is the government of Ontario.
they're debating it, but at the end of the day, okay. So under this is my opinion.